Atlanta fans didn't wait for a press conference, they didn't wait for a first practice, they didn't even wait for a game plan. The moment the news broke that the Atlanta Falcons had hired Kevin Stefanski, the backlash exploded, and it was instant. Not confusion, not cautious skepticism, outrage. Season ticket holders started talking about boycotts. Fans flooded social media saying they'd rather watch on TV than step foot in the stadium. Some even vowed to show up wearing Shadur Sanders jerseys every single game, not to support the team but to send a message. And here's the wild part, Stefanski hasn't coached a single snap in Atlanta yet. So why does this hire feel radioactive? Because for a lot of Falcons fans, this isn't just another coaching decision. It's personal. Stefanski's name is permanently tied to what happened in Cleveland with Shadur Sanders. A rookie season many believe was mishandled, undermined, and never given a fair chance to breathe. And now, that same coach is being dropped into a city where Shedur's father isn't just respected, he's revered. Atlanta isn't just any NFL market, it's a city with memory, a city with pride, a city where prime time isn't a nickname, it's part of the culture. That's why fans aren't just angry, they feel disrespected. To them, this move looks tone-deaf at best and reckless at worst. What makes this even more shocking is who signed off on it. Arthur Blank, a billionaire owner who's been around the league long enough to know how optics matter, just greenlit a hire that many fans see as lighting a match in a gasoline-soaked room. And instead of excitement, the reaction has been unified resistance. This isn't normal off-season noise, this isn't fans venting after a bad loss. This is a full-blown rejection before the introduction even finishes. And the question everyone's asking now is simple: how did it get this bad this fast? Because once you understand why Atlanta is reacting this way, you realize this story goes way deeper than football. The reaction in Atlanta wasn't delayed, it wasn't divided, it was immediate and it was explosive. The moment the Atlanta Falcons announced Kevin Stefanski as their next head coach, fans didn't ask for explanations, they didn't wait for an introductory press conference, they went straight to rejection. Social media lit up within minutes. Season ticket holders openly talked about boycotts. Longtime fans said they were done buying tickets altogether. Others promised they show up only to make a statement, rocking Shadur Sanders jerseys in the stands as a reminder of what this hire represents to them. And the most telling part, Stefanski hadn't coached a single practice yet. That's how fast this went sideways. Normally, new head coaches get at least a grace period, a chance to sell a vision, a chance to reset the tone. Stefanski didn't get that luxury in Atlanta. From the fan perspective, this hire felt like déjà vu, the same type of decision-making they've seen before, where ownership talks about progress while ignoring context, culture, and recent history. Because this wasn't viewed as a football-only move. To Falcons fans, Stefanski's name is inseparable from what happened in Cleveland with Shadur Sanders. Fair or not, many believe that rookie season was mishandled from top to bottom. Limited reps, poor protection. A system that never adjusted. That frustration didn't stay in Ohio, it followed Stefanski straight to Atlanta. And that's where things became combustible. Atlanta isn't just another NFL city, it's a place where Shadur Sanders isn't remembered as a former player, he's remembered as prime, a symbol, a cultural figure. So bringing in a coach that fans associate with undermining his son immediately hit a nerve, not subtly, not gradually, all at once. What shocked people even more was who made the call. Arthur Blank is known as a hands-on owner who understands optics. Yet this move felt to many fans completely disconnected from the city he owns a team in. The messaging didn't match the environment, the hire didn't match the moment. That's why the backlash wasn't just loud, it was unified. This wasn't fans arguing over scheme or play-calling philosophy. This was a city collectively saying, "This doesn't feel right." And once that sentiment took hold, the narrative around Stefanski's arrival was sealed before it even began. And the scariest part for Atlanta's front office? This was only the first wave. Because once fans start rejecting a coach before the first whistle, the pressure doesn't ease, it multiplies. For a lot of Atlanta fans, the anger didn't come from the hire itself. It came from the history attached to it. The name Kevin Stefanski already carried baggage long before he stepped into Atlanta, and that baggage is tied directly to Shadur Sanders. When Shedeur entered the league, expectations were high, but what unfolded in Cleveland quickly became a point of frustration for fans across the country. Many felt his rookie season was handled poorly from the start. Limited practice reps, a struggling offensive line that left him under constant pressure, little adjustment to protect a young quarterback still finding his footing. To fans watching closely, it looked less like development and more like survival. Whether fair or not, Stefanski became the face of that situation. And that's where things turned personal. From the fan perspective, it wasn't just about scheme or play calling. It was about opportunity. There's a widespread belief that Shedeur never got a real chance to grow into the role. Instead, he was thrown into chaos, then quietly blamed when things didn't immediately work. That narrative stuck, especially online, where clips, stats, and commentary were replayed over and over until frustration turned into resentment. Now take that resentment and drop it into Atlanta. This is a city where Sanders isn't just a former player. He's family. Prime time represents pride, confidence, and a certain standard of excellence that Atlanta embraces. So when fans see the coach they associate with undermining his son suddenly leading their franchise, it feels like a slap in the face. That's why the reaction sounds emotional, because it is. Fans aren't breaking down film when they say this feels wrong. They're reacting to what they believe happened, what it symbolized, and what it says about how decisions are being made. To them, this hire ignores context. It ignores memory, and it ignores the connection between the city and one of its most iconic figures. Some fans have gone even further, framing the situation as cultural and racial in nature. It's important to be clear here, these are opinions and perceptions voiced by fans, not proven facts. But perception matters, especially in a predominantly black city where representation, respect, and awareness carry weight. When fans say this move feels tone-deaf, they're talking about optics as much as outcomes. That's why the anger hasn't cooled off. This isn't about giving Stefanski time to win people over. For many fans, the damage was done the moment his name was announced. Because to them, this hire reopened a wound they don't believe ever healed, and once a decision feels personal, logic alone won't fix it. Which is exactly why the backlash didn't fade overnight, it intensified. To really understand why this hire exploded the way it did, you have to understand one thing about Atlanta: Sanders isn't just a former Falcon here. He's part of the city's identity. His presence still hangs over Atlanta in a way that few athletes in any city can match. Isn't remembered simply for stats or highlights. He represents confidence, swagger, excellence, and unapologetic self-belief. Primetime wasn't just a nickname. It was a mindset that resonated deeply with Atlanta, especially during an era when the city was shaping its modern cultural voice. For many fans, symbolized black excellence on the biggest stage, and that legacy never faded when he left the field. That's why anything connected to his name still carries weight. So when Kevin Stefanski arrives in Atlanta with a reputation, fair or not, of mishandling Shadur Sanders, it hits differently here than it would anywhere else. In another market, this might have been debated as football philosophy. In Atlanta, it became emotional almost instantly. Fans aren't separating Shedeur from Dayan. To them, the two are connected not just by blood but by legacy. Shedeur isn't viewed as just another quarterback who struggled early. He's seen as the son of one of Atlanta's most beloved figures trying to carve his own path. When fans believe that path was obstructed or undermined, they don't process it clinically, they internalize it. And that's where the shadow comes in. Every decision involving Stefanski is now viewed through the lens of Dayan's legacy. Every loss, every quarterback struggle, every questionable call will be measured against what fans believe should have happened with Shedeur. That's not fair to Stefanski, but it's reality in this city. Atlanta doesn't forget who built its sports pride. There's also a deeper layer fans keep pointing to. Atlanta is a predominantly black city with a strong sense of cultural awareness. Many fans have said, and it's important to frame this clearly as fan perception, that hearing a coach associated with undermining a young black quarterback connected to a city icon feels tone-deaf. Not malicious, not intentional, but disconnected. Optics matter here. When fans say this wouldn't happen in Green Bay, they're not just talking geography, they're talking context. Atlanta expects decision-makers to understand the cultural ecosystem they're operating in, and to many fans, this hire ignored that entirely. That's why Dayan's shadow looms so large over this situation. It's not about nostalgia, it's about respect, about awareness, about knowing that in Atlanta, primetime isn't history, he's still present. And once fans feel that presence was disregarded, it's no longer about football decisions alone. It becomes about identity, and that's a battle no coach wins easily, especially before they've coached a single game. What took this situation from heated debate to full-blown chaos was the speed at which fans took control of the narrative. This wasn't driven by reporters or insiders first. It was driven by regular Atlanta fans hitting record on their phones, and those videos spread like wildfire. Within hours of Kevin Stefanski being announced as the new head coach, reaction clips flooded social media. These weren't polished takes or calm breakdowns. They were raw, emotional, unfiltered. Fans filming themselves in their cars, living rooms, and parking lots, saying exactly how they felt without holding anything back. And that authenticity is why the videos hit so hard. One clip in particular caught fire. A lifelong Atlanta resident opened by saying how much he loved the city and its teams, then completely unloaded. He accused the organization of being unserious, of making decisions without thinking, and of disrespecting the city's culture. The frustration wasn't performative. It was personal. You could hear it in his voice. That video alone racked up hundreds of thousands of views, not because it was shocking, but because so many fans felt the same way. And it didn't stop there. Another viral clip escalated things even further, framing the hire as more than just a bad football decision. This fan argued that bringing in a coach associated with undermining Shadur Sanders to lead a team in a predominantly black city crossed a line. Whether everyone agrees with that framing or not, the video struck a nerve. Comments poured in. Support flooded the replies. The conversation shifted from X's and O's to optics and respect. That's when boycott talk went mainstream. Fans began posting screenshots of canceled season tickets. Others vowed not to attend games at all. Some said they'd still show up, but only wearing Deion Sanders jerseys as a silent protest. Not to cheer against the Falcons, but to remind ownership who this city identifies with. That visual alone became symbolic, a message without a chant. What made this uprising different from typical fan outrage is that it wasn't scattered. It was unified. Different voices, same message. Over and over, fans said the hire felt tone-deaf, rushed, and disconnected from Atlanta's identity. Even fans who tried to be fair, who said they'd give Stefanski a chance, still admitted the move didn't sit right. And once that kind of momentum builds online, it's nearly impossible to slow down. Algorithms amplify emotion. The angrier the clip, the further it spreads. Each new video fed the next. Reaction turned into response. Response turned into resistance. By the time national media started paying attention, Atlanta fans had already made one thing clear: this wasn't noise that would fade in a news cycle. This was a movement. And the most dangerous part for the Falcons? Movements don't care about press conferences or explanations. Once fans feel unheard, they stop waiting for answers. They start applying pressure. And Kevin Stefanski walked into Atlanta with that pressure already boiling before he ever stepped on the field. If this hire were only about optics, the Falcons might have been able to weather the storm. But once fans started digging into the numbers, the backlash didn't just continue, it intensified. Because when you strip away emotion and look at the record, things don't get better, they get harder to defend. Let's start with the basics. During his final 2 seasons in Cleveland, Kevin Stefanski went 8-26. That's not a rough patch, that's a collapse. Over that same span, the offense routinely ranked near the bottom of the league. We're talking bottom 5 territory in total offense and dead last in points per game more than once. For a coach who was supposed to be an offensive mind, those numbers hit like a gut punch. And Falcons fans noticed immediately. What made it sting even more was the comparison sitting right in front of them. Raheem Morris, the coach Atlanta just moved on from, finished his last 2 seasons with a 16-18 record. Not elite, not disastrous, competitive. Yet Morris was dismissed, while Stefanski, with double the losses and worse offensive production, was handed the keys. To fans, that didn't feel like progress. It felt backwards. Then came the deeper dive. Fans started pulling rankings, offensive efficiency, red zone production, points per drive. The picture stayed ugly. In Cleveland, Stefanski's offenses ranked 30th, 28th, and 31st across recent seasons. That's not bad luck, that's a trend. And trends are what scare fan bases, especially ones that have lived through false resets before. Quarterback development became the next flashpoint. Under Stefanski, multiple quarterbacks struggled to find rhythm or consistency. Shadur Sanders was at the center of that frustration, but he wasn't the only one. Fans point to constant instability, changing approaches, and a system that never seemed to adjust to personnel. Fair or not, Stefanski's track record with quarterbacks became part of the indictment. Now place that history in Atlanta, where the future revolves around Michael Penix Jr. Immediately, fans started asking uncomfortable questions. If Stefanski couldn't stabilize offenses in Cleveland, why would this be different? If quarterbacks struggled under his watch before, why should Atlanta expect a breakthrough now? That's where skepticism hardened into resistance. This wasn't just fans being emotional. This was fans doing the math and not liking the answer. Losses plus low rankings plus questionable quarterback outcomes equals doubt, and when doubt stacks on top of cultural frustration, it turns volatile. Because here's the truth, fans will forgive a coach with bad numbers if they believe in the direction. What Atlanta fans are struggling with is believing there is one. To them, the stats don't tell a story of redemption. They tell a story of risk, one the Falcons didn't need to take. And once numbers start confirming what emotions already feel, the argument stops being loud. It starts being convincing. This is where the conversation becomes uncomfortable and also unavoidable. Because while some fans insist this backlash is purely about football, a growing number of Atlanta voices are saying that explanation doesn't fully hold up. To them, this isn't just about wins, losses, or schemes. It's about context, optics, and respect. To be clear, no one is claiming there was malicious intent behind the hire, but intent isn't the only thing that matters. Perception does too, and in Atlanta, perception carries weight. Fans across social media have repeatedly said that hearing Kevin Stefanski, a coach many associate with undermining Shadur Sanders, sends the wrong message in a city like this. Atlanta is a predominantly black city with deep cultural pride, and Deion Sanders isn't just a former Falcon here, he's a symbol, a standard, a source of identity. That's why fans keep saying, this might fly somewhere else but not here. It's been said by multiple Atlanta supporters that even if Stefanski's handling of Shedeur in Cleveland wasn't intentional or personal, the visual of this hire feels off. A coach linked to a young black quarterback struggles being placed in charge of a franchise in a city where that quarterback's father is a revered icon naturally raises questions. Not accusations, questions. And once those questions are in the air, ignoring them only makes things worse. Some fans have gone further, openly framing the situation as racial in nature. Others strongly disagree and say football decisions shouldn't be filtered through race at all. Both perspectives exist, and that tension is exactly why this debate has grown so intense. The key point is that this framing didn't come from analysts first, it came from the fan base itself. And when a fan base starts using words like tone-deaf, disconnected, and out of touch, that signals something deeper than normal frustration. Atlanta fans often point out that this city is Green Bay. It isn't Kansas City. It is Boston. Culture matters here, history matters, awareness matters. They expect ownership and leadership to understand the ecosystem they're operating in, not just the spreadsheet. Whether that expectation is fair or not, it's real. This is why calls for boycotts didn't sound exaggerated to many locals. To them, withholding support isn't about punishment, it's about being heard, about forcing decision-makers to acknowledge the broader implications of their choices. And here's the reality, once a hire becomes tied to cultural identity, it stops being something a coach can fix with a playbook. Wins might quiet the noise eventually, but they won't erase the first impression, because fans don't just remember what was done, they remember how it made them feel. That's the layer Atlanta is wrestling with right now, not proof, not guilt, but perception and whether the Falcons understood the city they represent when they made this move. This is where the story stops being about reaction and starts being about consequence. Because whether Kevin Stefanski agrees with the criticism or not, the reality is simple. He's walking into one of the most hostile environments any new NFL head coach has faced before coaching a single game. There will be no honeymoon period. Every press conference will be dissected. Every loss will be magnified, every offensive struggle will be tied back to Cleveland. And every time the quarterback position looks shaky, fans will immediately draw comparisons to how Shadur Sanders was handled under his watch. That narrative is already locked in and Stefanski doesn't get to opt out of it. What makes this pressure different is that it isn't coming from media alone, it's coming from the stands. Atlanta fans have already made it clear that this won't be quiet disapproval. The promise to wear Deion Sanders jerseys isn't a joke or a meme, it's a statement. A reminder every Sunday of the connection fans feel was ignored, that visual alone ensures Stefanski will never coach in anonymity here. The city will never let him forget the context of his arrival. And that's where the karma narrative comes in. Online, fans keep saying this feels like poetic justice. Not because they want Stefanski to fail, but because they believe he's finally experiencing the kind of pressure they feel Shedeur endured: constant scrutiny, no grace, no benefit of the doubt. Whether that's fair is debatable, but the sentiment is widespread. Fans believe the universe has a way of balancing things, and right now, Stefanski is on the receiving end. Meanwhile, Shedeur's situation couldn't look more different. With a fresh start and a coaching staff that appears committed to his development, Shedeur is quietly moving forward while watching the storm unfold from a distance. He doesn't need to say anything. The contrast speaks for itself. One man is trying to rebuild trust in a city that doesn't want him. The other is focused on growth, removed from the chaos that once surrounded him. That contrast is why this moment feels symbolic. For the Falcons, what comes next depends on one thing: results. Wins can soften resistance. Competence can cool outrage, but even success won't erase first impressions. Stefanski isn't just coaching football in Atlanta. He's navigating identity, history, and emotion all at once, and that's a tougher playbook than any defensive scheme. For fans, the question now is how long this standoff lasts. Does the boycott hold? Do the jerseys fill the stands? Does ownership respond or wait it out? No one knows yet. But one thing is clear: this hire didn't just raise expectations, it raised stakes. And in Atlanta, where memory runs deep and respect matters, every move Stefanski makes will be measured against the one that brought him here. This isn't redemption territory, it's a proving ground, and the pressure isn't coming later, it's already here. What makes this entire situation hit differently isn't the outrage, the boycotts, or even the numbers. It's the contrast. Because while Kevin Stefanski is stepping into one of the most hostile coaching environments imaginable, Shadur Sanders is doing the exact opposite, quietly moving forward without saying a word. That silence matters. Shedeur never turned his frustration into a spectacle. He didn't run to social media. He didn't call out coaches or air grievances publicly. He absorbed the pressure, took the hits, and kept working. Now, as the coach many fans believe mishandled his rookie season walks into a city already ready to reject him, Shedeur doesn't need to react. The moment speaks for itself. That's why so many fans keep using the word karma. Not as celebration, not as revenge, but as balance. Karma doesn't always look like someone losing their job. Sometimes it looks like someone finally experiencing the weight they once placed on someone else. Stefanski wanted a second chance, a fresh start, a new city to prove the problem wasn't him. Instead, he landed in Atlanta, a city that remembers everything, questions everything, and isn't willing to grant blind trust. And that's not something a playbook fixes. For the Atlanta Falcons, this moment is bigger than one hire. It's a test of awareness, of patience, of whether leadership understands the difference between making a decision and understanding its impact. Fans aren't just angry because they dislike Stefanski. They're angry because they feel unheard, overlooked, and dismissed, emotions that don't fade just because a season starts. For Stefanski, the road ahead is brutal. Every loss will echo louder. Every offensive struggle will reopen old wounds. Every quarterback issue will invite comparisons he can't escape. And those Deion Sanders jerseys in the stands won't be there to troll, they'll be there to remind of history, of pride, of context. But here's the part that gets lost in all the noise. No one actually wins in this scenario if it turns toxic. Fans don't get better football, players don't get stability, and a city that loves its team ends up divided from it. That's why this conclusion isn't about rooting for failure or celebrating struggle, it's about accountability. Because this story isn't finished yet. If Stefanski succeeds, he'll have to earn it the hard way through consistency, humility, and results that speak louder than optics. If he fails, this moment will be remembered as the warning that was ignored. Either way, Atlanta won't forget how this began. And as for Shadur Sanders, he doesn't need vindication speeches or public apologies. He already has the most powerful thing in sports: momentum, silence, and the knowledge that sometimes the loudest response is simply moving on while the world catches up. That's not celebration. That's karma doing its work.